When two people meet, there is often an excitement, a spark, a pull towards something new. But the initial spark is not yet a fire, and a wise man knows this. Before he steps forward with his heart in full, before he gives the deeper parts of himself, he will often remain still and watch. Observation is not a lack of interest. In truth, it is the opposite. When a man truly desires a woman, when he senses she might be the one he could walk beside for a long time, he steps into a quiet state of study. This is not the study of what she says only, but of how she moves through the world. He is not looking for perfection is an illusion. He is looking for truth. And truth often shows itself not in what a person claims, but in what they reveal when they are not trying to impress. A man who understands himself will not rush. In the early moments, he will let silence do the work. In silence, people's masks grow heavy. Words become less rehearsed. Habits rise to the surface. He will watch how she treats people she does not need to impress. The waiter, the taxi driver, the stranger in the market. Is there warmth there? Is there patience? Or does kindness appear only when it is convenient? Observation also means he listens for what is between the words. Does she speak about others with compassion? Or is her tongue sharpened by judgment? Does her laughter come freely, or is it calculated, placed only where she wants to be liked? A man tests not by asking 100 direct questions, but by allowing life to unfold naturally and seeing how she behaves in moments she cannot prepare for. If a plan changes suddenly, how does she react? If she is inconvenienced, does she remain composed or does irritation take the wheel? These are not games. This is not manipulation. It is discernment. Because a man who values his peace will guard it carefully, and the woman he chooses will become a part of that peace or the one who disturbs it. Observation is often invisible. She may not even know it is happening. They may be walking through the city, sharing coffee in the morning, or simply exchanging messages, and still, he is seeing her in ways that go beyond the obvious. When she talks about her friends, does she celebrate their wins or diminish them? When she speaks about her family, is there gratitude or only complaint? In observation, time becomes the filter. People can wear a mask for a day, a week, even a few months. But no mask survives in the presence of consistent attention. A man who takes his time will not be fooled by the performance of affection. He waits to see if affection is an instinct, not a tool. Sometimes his observation is subtle. He might introduce her to a group of his friends, not to test her social skills directly, but to see if she shows genuine interest in others or if she only seeks attention for herself. He might share a small personal story, not the deepest wound, but something enough to reveal vulnerability. And notice whether she holds it with care or treats it lightly. Observation also happens in silence. He notices how she occupies space when nothing is happening. When the conversation pauses, does she feel the need to fill it with noise? Or can she rest comfortably in the quiet? A man who is serious about his life does not give his heart away to the first smile or soft word. He knows that attraction is only the doorway, but what lives inside a person, their integrity, their consistency, their values, is what determines if the path will lead anywhere worth traveling. When he observes, he is not only looking for signs of compatibility, he is also watching for the small warnings that could grow larger over time. How does she handle frustration? Does she speak truth even when it is difficult? Does she own her mistakes or shift blame quickly? And yet, this observation is not one-sided. Often, the woman is observing too. The difference is that a man who is ready for something real does not rush past these early steps. He understands that what begins in haste often ends in regret. In this stage, he will take note of her ability to live with patience. If she demands rapid commitment, instant declarations, and constant reassurance before any real depth has been built, he knows she may be more in love with the idea of connection than with the actual person in front of her. There is an art to watching without suspicion. It is not about waiting for failure. It is about letting truth rise naturally. A man does not need to provoke drama to see how she reacts. Life will bring enough moments on its own. A delayed train, a wrong order at dinner, an unexpected change of plans. These small disruptions often reveal more than any planned question could. When a man chooses to observe before committing, it is because he values the long term over the short term. He is not hunting for a fleeting thrill. He is building the foundation for something that can stand against storms. And foundations are never laid in a hurry. It is in this quiet testing ground that real understanding grows. Without forcing the pace, without demanding answers too soon, a man learns who she is when the light is on her and who she is when no one is looking. Both matter. Both tell the story. Observation before commitment is the gathering of unspoken truths, the patient uncovering of what lies beyond appearance. It is the willingness to see someone fully before deciding to hold them closely. It is a discipline born not from mistrust, but from the understanding that choice is the most powerful tool a man has, and to choose well, he must first see clearly. When a man is drawn toward a woman he truly values, his interest is not only in how she appears today, but in how she will stand over time. Anyone can shine for a moment. Words can be polished, actions can be calculated, impressions can be crafted for the early days. But the question he quietly holds is this: will she be the same when the days are less exciting? Testing consistency is not an official challenge. It is not announced. It is the silent awareness that initial energy, no matter how genuine, is often influenced by novelty. In the early stages, both people are often at their most generous, most attentive, most agreeable. But life, by its nature, cannot remain in a permanent state of celebration. The ordinary days always arrive. The true measure is not who she is when she wants to impress, but who she remains when the desire to impress fades. A man who understands this will take time to see if her words and actions align. When she speaks of kindness, does she practice it in moments where kindness is inconvenient? When she claims loyalty, does she show it even when there is no benefit to her? When she promises honesty, does she still tell the truth when the truth is uncomfortable? This is why patience becomes his greatest tool. Consistency reveals itself only through repetition. A single moment of goodness may be genuine, but it may also be a performance. The same can be said of disappointment. One mistake does not define a person. The truth is always found in the patterns. He may notice the small things. Does she respond to messages in a way that matches the effort she claims to give? Does she treat him the same when they are alone as when they are in public? Does she listen with the same attention when the topic is his concerns, not just hers? Consistency is not about perfection. It is about alignment. It is about whether her actions are an extension of her principles or simply tools for influence. A man who seeks depth will test this by allowing enough time to pass for comfort to settle in, because comfort has a way of revealing the unfiltered self. When someone is trying to earn affection, they often act with heightened awareness. They choose their words carefully. They present their best self. But when familiarity grows, the effort can fade, and what is left in that space is the real rhythm of their character. A man pays attention to whether she maintains her respect for him, not only when feelings are strong, but when there is disagreement or frustration. Disagreement is one of the most reliable tests of consistency because it removes the comfort of harmony. In those moments, does she still communicate with care, or does she shift to blame, withdrawal, or harshness? Testing consistency is also about seeing how she behaves when he is not at his best. In times of personal challenge, does she remain supportive, or does her patience vanish? When his attention is momentarily elsewhere, does she grow resentful, or does she hold the same understanding she would want for herself? Sometimes, a man will take note of whether her values are consistent across all parts of her life. If she speaks of honesty but bends the truth to others, he will wonder how long it will be before that same bending is turned toward him. If she insists on loyalty but easily dismisses friends in their absence, he will question how loyalty is truly defined in her mind. Consistency is tested not by grand gestures but by the everyday moments. How she treats him on a busy day. How she speaks when she is tired, how she behaves when she believes he is not watching. The repetition of these small moments builds the real picture. A man may also create space, intentionally or not, to see whether she keeps her energy steady in the absence of constant attention. Early on, it is easy to be affectionate when communication is frequent. But if he becomes less available for a period, does her tone shift dramatically? Does she remain warm and understanding, or does her behavior become cold or resentful? It is in these subtle spaces that he learns whether her connection is rooted in him as a person or in the feeling of being pursued. Because pursuit changes, attention fluctuates, and real connection survives those fluctuations, he may also watch how she treats her own commitments. If she speaks of discipline but abandons her goals quickly, He wonders how that same habit might affect a shared life. If she values health but neglects it when distracted, he sees a pattern of starting strong but losing focus. This testing is not meant to catch someone in failure, rather it is about revealing stability. Life will inevitably bring changes, challenges, losses, victories, setbacks. A consistent person weathers these without shifting the core of who they are. A man who seeks a true partner wants to know that the woman he chooses is anchored, not drifting with every emotional tide. Even the way she treats people over time becomes part of this observation. If she begins with great enthusiasm for new friendships but quickly grows distant, he will consider whether that same arc might appear in a relationship. It is also possible for him to test consistency by sharing his boundaries and watching how she respects them. Respecting boundaries once is easy. Respecting them always, even when it is inconvenient, shows a deeper understanding. In truth, consistency is not something that can be faked indefinitely. It requires the alignment of belief, habit, and intention. If one of these is missing, the cracks will eventually appear. And so, without pressing, without forcing, he allows time to pass and life to move naturally, knowing that what is real will remain and what is only a performance will fade away. When a man is genuinely interested in a woman, he will not only look at how she treats him when things are easy, but also at how she navigates the invisible lines that define personal space, personal values, and personal priorities. In every meaningful relationship, there are unspoken rules that protect the individuality of each person. These rules are not walls meant to keep someone out. They are the structures that allow trust, closeness, and understanding to grow without suffocating the other person. Boundaries are not a sign of distance, they are a sign of self-awareness. A man who understands himself will have certain rhythms, principles, and non-negotiables that shape his life. These might be as simple as time he needs for his own pursuits, moments of solitude, or commitments to his work, family, or personal growth. When he meets a woman, he watches closely to see whether she understands and respects these without trying to reshape them for her own comfort. Respect for boundaries shows itself in small moments. If he says he needs a day to focus on a personal project, does she honor that space or does she insist on constant access? If he values his morning routine, does she treat it as important to him or as something to be interrupted without thought? These may appear small in the beginning, but over time, they reveal whether someone is willing to coexist with another person's life rather than trying to take control of it. Testing boundaries is not about seeing if she will obey. It is about discovering whether she understands the concept of mutual respect. Because in a lasting relationship, both people must give and receive space without using it as a weapon. A man who values himself knows that without healthy boundaries, affection can turn into obligation and connection can turn into control. There are also emotional boundaries, the right to feel, process, and express in one's own way. A man notices whether she pressures him to respond immediately in every moment of conflict or if she allows the pause needed for clear thinking. He watches how she reacts when he disagrees with her. Does she respect the difference of opinion or does she take it as a personal attack? Sometimes, boundaries extend to social interactions. If he chooses not to share certain private details with acquaintances or friends, does she honor that privacy or does she share his personal matters freely? If he prefers to keep certain aspects of his life between them, does she respect that intimacy or does she treat it as public information? A man may also set values as boundaries. For example, he may refuse to engage in certain behaviors, gossip, dishonesty, unnecessary conflict, and will see whether she supports these principles or tries to pull him into patterns he avoids. Boundaries are tested most when emotions run high. In moments of frustration, does she still respect his personal space or does she invade it in an attempt to force resolution? In moments of joy, does she still recognize his need for balance or does she push for constant interaction without pause? Respect for boundaries is also visible in how she handles her own. A man watches whether she sets limits for herself, whether she communicates them clearly, and whether she maintains them even when tempted to let them slide. Someone who cannot uphold their own boundaries will often struggle to honor those of others. Over time, he will notice if she tries to subtly shift his boundaries to suit her needs. This might appear as small suggestions to change habits, a gentle undermining of his routines, or emotional reactions when he chooses himself in a moment instead of her. These signs tell him whether she views boundaries as mutual protection or as obstacles to be removed. He may also watch how she reacts when he says no. A single no should not create hostility in a healthy connection. If it does, it reveals that the relationship is based on compliance rather than respect. A man who knows his worth will not fear the loss of someone who cannot accept his limits. Instead, he will take it as a clear sign of incompatibility. Testing respect for boundaries can happen naturally. He may decline an invitation to spend time together, not to distance himself, but to see if she takes it personally or understands that closeness does not require constant presence. He may choose to keep certain hobbies or friendships separate from the relationship, simply to observe whether she supports the idea of individual identity within a shared life. Respect is also seen in timing. If she knows he is occupied, does she wait for the right moment to reach out, or does she demand attention immediately? If he is dealing with personal matters, does she allow him the mental space to handle them, or does she press for her own needs to be met first? Physical boundaries, too, are a reflection of respect. A man may watch whether she asks for consent in subtle ways, not only in intimacy, but in small gestures like touching his belongings, moving his things, or rearranging his environment. These quiet moments reveal whether she sees him as an equal partner or as someone to be managed. Boundaries are also about energy. A man has a certain emotional and mental capacity each day, and he will notice whether she can sense when he needs to recharge. The ability to give space without resentment is a mark of emotional maturity, and it often separates a fleeting connection from a sustainable one. When a man tests for respect of boundaries, he is not searching for someone who agrees with him at all times. He is searching for someone who can hold her own individuality while honoring his, someone who understands that two complete lives can meet and intertwine without either losing their shape. The absence of respect for boundaries leads to erosion. It may start with small intrusions, interruptions, dismissals, subtle disregard. But over time, it can create a dynamic where one person feels constantly on guard. A man who values peace will sense this early, which is why his observation in this area is deliberate and steady. He understands that attraction can grow quickly, but trust grows slowly, and without trust in each other's boundaries, the relationship cannot remain balanced. In his mind, boundaries are not there to keep love apart, but to give it the right space to breathe. When a man is drawn toward a woman in a serious way, he will not only be captivated by her beauty, her charm, or her intellect, but he will quietly watch the way she holds herself when emotions begin to shift. Anyone can be pleasant when life flows smoothly, but the truth of a person's nature is often revealed in moments when the waters are rough. Emotional stability is not about never feeling anger, sadness, or frustration. It is about how one navigates those emotions when they arise. A man who understands himself will notice how she responds to stress, not just once, but again and again, because emotional patterns are rarely hidden for long. He will pay attention to how she reacts when things do not go her way. If plans change unexpectedly, does she adapt with calmness, or does she allow frustration to spill over and affect everyone around her? If she feels disappointment, does she take time to process it, or does she direct it outward in blame or hostility? There is also a subtler test, how she reacts to him when he makes a mistake. Even small mistakes can reveal much. Does she address the problem with balance, or does her reaction escalate beyond what the situation calls for? A man watches this carefully because in long-term connection, mistakes are inevitable, and the ability to handle them with proportionate responses determines whether the relationship can remain steady over time. Emotional stability shows itself in disagreements. In moments of conflict, does she remain respectful in her tone, or does she use hurtful words as weapons? Is she able to separate the issue from the person, or does she attack his character instead of addressing the problem? These are not small differences. They define the emotional safety of a relationship. Sometimes he will observe how she speaks about her past conflicts with others. If every story paints her as the victim and others as entirely wrong, he will wonder whether she avoids self-reflection. Emotional stability often comes with the ability to see one's own role in difficult situations, to acknowledge faults as well as strengths. There are times when he will watch how she handles pressure from outside the relationship, work deadlines, family tensions, personal challenges? Does she manage her emotions in a way that prevents them from spilling uncontrollably into other areas of life? Or does one moment of stress create a chain reaction that disrupts everything around her? A man who is building his life with intention is deeply aware of the energy he allows into it. If her emotional state is unpredictable, if every small challenge becomes a storm, he will hesitate, knowing that peace is difficult to build in a constant climate of volatility. Emotional stability is also tested in patience. In situations where she must wait for a response, for an outcome, for a decision, can she remain composed? Or does anxiety push her into unnecessary action? Can she allow space for things to unfold, or does she seek constant control to avoid discomfort? In early stages, many people present their most balanced self. But over time, comfort removes the conscious effort to always be at one's best. That is when true patterns appear. A man who observes well will allow enough time for those patterns to show. He will notice whether her mood changes unpredictably, whether joy can turn into resentment in a single moment without reason, whether affection is withdrawn as a means of control. Sometimes, he will quietly test this by sharing a situation that might be disappointing. Perhaps a plan must be postponed, or his attention is needed elsewhere. He will see if she responds with understanding or with unnecessary dramatization. Her response tells him whether she is capable of walking through the realities of life without turning every difficulty into a personal slight. He also observes her capacity for emotional recovery. Everyone has moments of anger or sadness. The difference lies in how quickly one returns to balance. A woman who can process her feelings and return to clarity is different from one who holds onto them for days, letting them grow heavier until they overshadow everything else. In his mind, emotional stability is not about suppressing emotions. It is about expressing them in a way that does not destroy connection. It is about speaking from a place of clarity rather than impulse, about knowing when to step back and when to engage. Another area he watches is how she handles the emotions of others. If someone else is upset, can she listen and respond without being swept into their chaos? Or does she absorb their energy and react as if it were her own? This reveals whether she can maintain her own emotional center even in the presence of turbulence. Emotional stability also means being able to separate temporary feelings from lasting truth. Anger may rise, but can she remember in that moment that the man in front of her is the same one she valued the day before? Disappointment may come, but can she respond without rewriting the entire story of the relationship? Over time, he will notice if her emotional state creates an environment of trust or one of uncertainty. If he feels he must always measure his words to avoid triggering disproportionate reactions, he will see this as a sign that stability is lacking. If, instead, he feels free to be himself without fearing unpredictable emotional shifts, he will value this as a rare and steady foundation. Sometimes, he will pay attention to how she speaks about her feelings. Does she own them, saying, "I feel this way"? Or does she project them outward, saying, "You make me feel this way"? The first shows responsibility. The second can indicate a habit of placing emotional control in the hands of others. He will notice whether her emotional tone matches the scale of the situation. Small inconveniences do not require deep outrage. Moments of joy do not need to be diminished by suspicion. A stable person can feel fully without letting temporary emotions dictate lasting choices. In his observation, he is not searching for someone who never feels deeply. He is searching for someone whose depth is balanced by self-awareness, someone who can walk through life's inevitable difficulties without allowing them to destroy the connection they have built. Emotional stability, in his eyes, is less about the absence of storms and more about the ability to stand calmly in the rain until it passes. When life is smooth, most people can be pleasant, attentive, and encouraging. Joy requires little effort to share. But when difficulties arrive, when the weight of reality presses down, the presence of another person begins to show its true nature. A man who is considering a woman for a deep and lasting connection will often watch closely how she stands beside him when circumstances are not in his favor. Support during challenges is not only about solving problems. In truth, it is often less about doing and more about being. A man who faces hardship will feel the shift in those around him. Some will step back, unsure of how to help. Some will quietly judge. Others will remain present, offering not always answers, but stability. The woman he desires to build with is the one whose presence strengthens rather than drains him in such times. He will notice how she reacts when his energy is low, when he is preoccupied with difficulties that have nothing to do with her. Does she grow impatient and interpret his distraction as disinterest, or does she hold space for him, understanding that life does not always allow for perfect attention? The difference between the two is significant. One adds pressure to an already heavy moment, the other offers relief. Support is often quiet. It may be as simple as listening without interrupting, without rushing to provide solutions that have not been asked for. Sometimes it is the willingness to share silence, to sit together without the demand to make everything better instantly. A man who values depth will recognize the power in this kind of calm companionship. Challenges come in many forms. They may be professional setbacks, a missed opportunity, an unexpected loss of position, a financial strain. They may be personal, the illness of a family member, a conflict with a friend, or a period of uncertainty about the future. In each case, he will see if she is able to stand alongside him without letting the discomfort of the situation push her away. In difficult times, emotions can shift quickly. Frustration, disappointment, and worry may appear without warning. A man will notice whether she can navigate his changing moods with understanding, or whether she responds with irritation because his emotional state is no longer convenient for her. Support also shows itself in the absence of judgment. When a man opens up about his struggles, he is not always looking for advice. Often, he is looking for reassurance that his vulnerability will not be used against him later. A woman who is truly supportive does not store his weakest moments as ammunition for future conflicts. She holds them with care as something entrusted to her. There will be moments when his challenges require him to shift his priorities. He may have less time to spend together, or his focus may be divided. In such moments, he watches whether she becomes resentful or whether she adjusts with patience. He notices if she can offer understanding instead of making herself another burden he must carry. Sometimes, support means offering perspective without imposing it. She might help him see a path he has overlooked, but she does not force him to walk it before he is ready. She might remind him of his strengths, not in a way that denies his struggle, but in a way that reawakens his confidence. In moments of personal failure, a man will see if she treats him differently. Does she withdraw her respect when his image is not at its best, or does she continue to speak to him with the same dignity she did before? Respect that survives hardship is rare, and he will take note of it. He will also observe whether her support is consistent, not just present when it is easy. Some will offer comfort at the beginning of a difficulty, but their patience fades as time passes. True support does not disappear when solutions take longer than expected. Support during challenges is also about balance. A woman who takes on his burdens as her own may mean well, but if she loses her own stability in the process, she cannot be the grounding presence he needs. He will see whether she can remain centered while still walking with him through the difficulty. Sometimes, the challenge may involve her indirectly, a choice he must make that impacts their plans, a sacrifice he must ask her to share. Her reaction in such moments speaks loudly. If she meets these with understanding rather than resentment, it shows she values the partnership more than temporary comfort. A man also pays attention to how she supports without overstepping. There is a difference between being helpful and trying to take control. He will value the woman who trusts his ability to navigate his own challenges while still being available when he seeks her hand or her mind. Support can be as practical as helping him organize his thoughts, or as intangible as creating an environment where he can rest without feeling judged for needing rest. It can be as small as a message reminding him that she believes in him, or as significant as adjusting her own life to make space for his temporary struggle. In his mind, support is not about rescuing. It is about reinforcing. It is about being a presence that steadies him when life attempts to shake his footing. When she can do this without making him feel small, without using his difficult moments to claim superiority, he will feel the weight of her value more than in any moment of celebration. He will recall not just her actions during these times, but the energy she brought into them. Was she calm when he was not? Was she hopeful when he was doubtful? Was she grounded when he was shaken? These qualities create a kind of trust that cannot be manufactured in easier days. Through these observations, He begins to understand the depth of her commitment, the steadiness of her heart, and the way she treats a relationship as something to be protected not only in moments of ease, but in moments when the world feels heavy. In the beginning of any connection, there is often a tendency for people to show only their brightest side. It is natural. In the presence of someone we want to impress, we polish our words, refine our behavior, and carefully select what parts of ourselves we reveal. A man who is serious about choosing the right partner understands this, and so he looks beyond the performance. He waits to see what remains when the initial desire to impress fades away. Performance is temporary. It is an arrangement of gestures and words designed to influence how another person sees us. Authenticity, however, is constant. It does not shift to match the mood of the room or the expectations of others. It comes from a place where the self is accepted, where there is no need to wear a mask to be worthy of love. When a man observes a woman he is truly interested in, he will pay attention to the gap, if there is one, between who she presents herself to be and who she truly is when no one is watching. The performance may be charming, but he knows that charm without truth cannot sustain a lasting bond. Authenticity is revealed in the unplanned moments. How does she respond when she is caught off guard? When she is tired, distracted, or irritated, does her behavior still reflect the values she claims to hold? Or does she slip into patterns that contradict her words? These moments are small, but they are the ones that tell him whether she lives her truth or simply recites it. In conversation, performance often seeks approval. It says the things that will be received well. Authenticity speaks what is real, even if it risks disagreement. A man listens to whether she can share her true thoughts without tailoring them only to be liked. He also notices her relationship with vulnerability. Performance hides flaws, seeking to create the illusion of perfection. Authenticity allows space for imperfection, knowing that honesty builds more trust than the appearance of flawlessness. If she can admit mistakes, if she can speak of her fears without turning them into drama, he sees this as a sign that her presence will remain steady even when life is not polished. There is also a quiet test in how she treats him when she believes there is nothing to gain. Performance often shines when it hopes for a reward, attention, affection, commitment. But when the moment offers no obvious benefit, is she still kind, still respectful, still present? Or does her energy shift depending on what she receives? A man may watch how her values hold across different environments. Some can be compassionate in private yet cold in public, or polite to strangers but harsh to those closest to them. Authenticity means that her principles are not situational. They are lived consistently, not just when someone is watching. He will also observe whether she adapts her personality too much to match others. Flexibility in social situations is natural, but when every setting brings a new version of her that feels disconnected from the last, he will wonder whether she has lost touch with her own identity. A woman who is authentic carries the same core self into every room, even if her tone or manner shifts slightly to fit the moment. Performance tends to be exhausting over time. It requires constant adjustment, careful attention to how one is perceived, and the suppression of anything that does not fit the chosen image. Authenticity is lighter. It allows connection to flow naturally without the weight of maintaining a role. A man can feel the difference. With performance, there is always a subtle distance, a sense that something is being managed rather than shared. When he spends time with her, he will notice how much of their interaction feels effortless versus how much feels rehearsed. If every story sounds carefully curated, if every response feels like it was chosen for affect rather than expression, he will sense the presence of performance. If instead there is a natural rhythm where laughter comes freely, silence is comfortable, and her words align with her behavior, he will recognize authenticity. Sometimes the test comes when he shares his own truth, a thought, an insecurity, a moment of failure. Performance often responds with what is expected, offering the right words but without depth. Authenticity listens fully, responds honestly, and engages without turning the moment into a stage for herself. Authenticity also shows in how she handles being misunderstood. Performance seeks to immediately correct the perception, to control the narrative so that she is always seen in the best light. Authenticity is willing to clarify, but it does not panic when others see something different because it is not dependent on universal approval. Over time, he will see whether her actions reflect her spoken intentions. Performance may promise much but deliver little. Authenticity delivers even without promising, because it is not driven by appearance but by alignment between belief and action. He will notice whether she can express disagreement without fear. Performance often avoids disagreement to maintain a pleasing image, but authenticity trusts that honesty, when delivered with respect, strengthens connection. A woman who is authentic will not mold herself entirely to his opinions. She will stand in her own truth while still being open to understanding his. Even in moments of celebration, authenticity stands apart. Performance might amplify excitement to be seen as supportive, but authenticity feels the joy genuinely and shares it naturally. The energy feels different, less about being noticed and more about being present. A man who values authenticity will give time for the layers to fall away. He will not rush to conclusions in the first weeks because performance can last for a while. But eventually, real life will create situations where effort cannot maintain the mask. Stress, comfort, fatigue, and unguarded moments will reveal what is underneath. If what he sees in those moments matches what she showed in the beginning, if the warmth, respect, and sincerity remain even when there is no performance, he will know he has found someone whose connection is rooted not in image, but in truth.